Welcome to Strategic Branding and Social Media. My name is Dr. Paula Powell, and I will be your instructor for the course. Throughout the semester, we'll explore strategic communication, branding, and the role social media plays in building and managing brands. Before we get into the specific platforms and strategies, we'll begin by establishing some of the foundational concepts that will guide us throughout the course. In the first module, we'll focus on the foundations of purposeful communication in a changing digital landscape. We'll look at strategy, branding, social media, and the growing role of AI. One idea I want you to keep in mind throughout this course is that while the tools and platforms will continue to change, effective communication still begins with having a clear purpose and understanding what you are trying to achieve. One of the major concepts you'll see throughout the course is strategic communication. Englyn explains that being strategic means communicating the best message through the right channels and measuring those efforts against organizational and communication specific goals. She describes this as the difference between simply doing communication work and doing the right communication work. Hallahan and his colleagues similarly define strategic communication as the purposeful use of communication by an organization to fulfill its mission. The key word here is purposeful. Strategic communication begins by analyzing the situation, including the problem or opportunities facing the organization, and then making communication decisions that support what the organization is trying to accomplish. Strategic communication is more than content. Being active does not automatically mean that you're being strategic. A brand can post every day and still lack a meaningful social media strategy. Strategy requires us to ask some important questions. Why are we communicating? Who are we trying to reach? What do we want the audience to think, feel, or do? And how will we know whether our communication worked? Throughout this course, I want you to think beyond simply creating content and focus on the purpose behind that content. Now, let's talk for a bit about public relations and marketing. Public relations and marketing are different disciplines, but today they are increasingly integrated, particularly in digital communication. Public relations traditionally focuses on relationships, reputation, credibility, and communication with multiple stakeholders. On the other hand, marketing tends to focus more directly on customers, products and services, demand, consumer behavior, and sales. On social media, however, these areas frequently overlap. A single platform might be used for marketing, public relations, customer service, reputation management, and community building. Both disciplines, therefore, contribute to strategic brand communication. Now that we understand the distinction between marketing and public relations, let's define a brand. When we talk about a brand, we're talking about much more than a logo. David Ogilvy described a brand as the intangible sum of a product's attributes. A brand includes its identity, values, personality, voice, reputation, and the experiences people associate with it. Ultimately, A brand exists in the minds of its audiences. An organization can strategically shape the experiences it provides, but audiences also determine the meaning and perceptions they attach to that brand. In this discussion of social media, I want you to begin thinking about the reasons why people, you included, use social media today. Now, before we can determine how brands are using social media, we need to understand why we use it. People use social media to connect and communicate, but they also use it for entertainment, discovery, search, learning, sharing, and building community. They follow creators, research products, shop, and communicate directly with brands. This is important because the reason someone uses a platform should influence how a brand communicates with them. The platform matters because the user's purpose matters. The social media landscape has changed considerably, and different platforms now serve different audiences, their needs, and behaviors. YouTube remains important for video, search, and learning. Facebook continues to play a major role in communities and groups. Instagram emphasizes visual storytelling, creators, and discovery, while TikTok has become important for entertainment, culture, and discovery. Reddit centers heavily on communities and recommendations, while LinkedIn serves a more professional audience. The important takeaway is that brands do not need to be everywhere. They need to understand where their audiences are and select platforms strategically. Another important change is that social media has become a search and discovery engine. Consumers now use social platforms to discover products and brands and to search for restaurants, travel ideas, reviews, how to information, trends, and recommendations. At the same time, algorithms can introduce users to brands they are not actively searching for. This means discoverability has become an important part of social media strategy. The consumer journey may begin long before someone actually searches for your brand by name. This is key information. We also can't talk about social media today without discussing artificial intelligence. AI can now assist communication professionals with generating ideas, creating and editing content, monitoring conversations, analyzing audience behavior, personalizing communication, and measuring performance. These tools can certainly make some aspects of our work faster and more efficient. However, AI does not replace strategy. Human judgment is still necessary to determine the goals, understand the audience, maintain the brand voice, verify accuracy, and make ethical decisions about what should ultimately be communicated. Now to the big question: why does social media matter to brands? Social media matters to brands for reasons that extend far beyond simply publishing content. It can help organizations build awareness, listen to their audiences, engage with consumers, humanize the brand, build community, provide customer service, drive traffic and sales, manage reputation, and learn from audiences. One of the most important things to remember is that social media is not simply a broadcasting tool. Its value comes from the ability to communicate in both directions. Brands can speak, but they can also listen, respond, and build relationships. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the contemporary consumer journey is rarely linear. A consumer may discover a brand, engage with its content, consider its products or services, take some type of action, and eventually become an advocate for that brand. But those steps do not always happen neatly or in that order. Someone might discover a brand on TikTok, read reviews on Reddit, visit the company's website, follow the brand on Instagram, and eventually make a purchase somewhere else. Social media can influence consumers at multiple points in their relationship with a brand. The bottom line is that social media can enhance a brand, but only when it is used strategically. We should not begin by asking, what should we post? We should instead begin by asking, what are we trying to achieve? Once we understand our goals, we can identify the audience, develop the appropriate message, choose the right channel, create content, engage with our audience, and measure the results. The strategic approach will guide much of the work we do throughout this course. These are some of the sources that informed the concepts and information presented in this lecture. Hallahan and his colleagues provide the scholarly foundation for our definition of strategic communication, while David Ogilvy's work inform our discussion on branding. I have also included the Pew Research Center data used to provide a current snapshot of social media use. Now, you do not need to memorize these references, but they're available to you if you would like to explore any of the concepts in the future.